Hi, I'm Matt Wood from the Legendary Runs podcast. It's a podcast, if you're not familiar, co-hosted by myself and my wife, Mara Wood, who you probably are familiar with, where we talk about celebrated contributions to significant series. Since it's the end of the year, I thought it would be interesting to look at some of the better collections of comics from the past 12 months. This is a biased list. I'm not going to probably match everyone's interest, but as far as a presentation, how well it's bound, what's actually collected in the comic, these are some of my favorite pieces of collected comic works from the past 12 months. So let's take a look at a few of them. The first one, and this is probably the bottom of the list that I've pulled, is The Time Runs Out oversized hardcover from Marvel. For those of you not familiar, this is Jonathan Hickman's work, and this is in a lot of ways his end of his Avengers and New Avengers run before Secret Wars, the event from 2015 that I'm sure most people that are interested in this kind of thing have read. In a lot of ways, I find the comics that are collected in this volume to be far more interesting than Secret Wars itself. Don't get me wrong, Secret Wars I feel like is one of Marvel's better events in the past 5 years or so. But as far as what's collected in these issues of Avengers and New Avengers, you have a lot of Marvel's greatest at the end of their rope. For those who haven't read it or those who have forgotten, this is at the point where different Earths, so like Earth 616, Earth whatever, they're colliding with one another. And even though it's been done 1,000 times in comics before, I feel as if Hickman handles, the big players in the Marvel Universe truly facing what the end of their universe looks like. This might be something that's forgotten about in 5 years, but as for something contemporary, I feel like this was a really, really well done collection. The next one that I want to talk about is the Superior Foes of Spider-Man Omnibus. In the case of Superior Foes of Spider-Man, this was a comic when it was first solicited. It was coming out around the time of Superior Spider-Man. This kind of seemed like some kind of weird fringe title, even though Nick Spencer, is not exactly. I mean, he wasn't a slouch at the time, but you weren't expecting something really special out of this, and it's easily one of the funniest comics around. It's basically D-list Spider-Man villains trying to I guess restart the Sinister Six, even though there's 5 of them. And the whole thing is complemented with Steve Lieber's incredible talent as a visual storyteller. For those of you familiar with Sex Criminals by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky, you know that, like, say, Zdarsky will add in his own visual gags. Lieber does the exact same thing. And even though it's like 16 issues, 17 issues, it's a really, really, really well-collected, well-told story that is way better than it has any right to be. I couldn't decide between Jason Aaron's Star Wars and Kieran Gillen's Darth Vader. Both are excellent. If I have to give an upper hand, I hate this because I'm a huge Jason Aaron fan, I would probably give it to Gillen's Darth Vader, which is in this hand, not this hand. This is a great story that focuses on a small... Darth Vader is one of the more revered characters in, I would say, modern mythology. But honestly, there's not a ton there to really work with. And what Kieran Gillen does with the help of Salvador Larroca, who does every issue of this, humanizes him, but at the same time really gives you that monster. In a lot of ways, this is one of the cases of doing what the prequels didn't quite do to flesh out the humanity of Anakin Skywalker. And it's a great book. This is the first volume. There's going to be 2. It's only 25 issues. Probably going to be doing an episode on this next year on Legendary Runs. So it's a great way to collect. I don't know. These are the variant covers of these hardcovers. I don't know if they still are there, but if not, then they're still widely available. You should be able to have no trouble getting your hands on these. I can't recommend it enough. I'm sure you're sick of me talking about Marvel. And it's not the last time that I'm going to talk about Marvel. But let's talk about something a little bit different. This is a weird one. This is DC Universe Rebirth Deluxe Edition. This is the one-shot comic, and granted, it's a 90-page comic that Jeff Johns and Jeff Johns' guys put out. I would say it was probably, May of last year, and maybe a little bit later. I don't really know. But it seems weird to collect one issue in a hardcover, but for collectors of trades and things like that, this is actually kind of a benefit because this is a great comic. Probably my favorite comic of this year. I read it multiple times. It doesn't really attach itself to any other series, so if you were to collect it in something larger, it wouldn't fit right in there. I mean, Jeff Johns, he's not going to be doing any writing for the foreseeable future, so this is kind of his, his last hurrah for a long, long time. So naturally, he gets Gary Frank, he gets Vince Shiver, Jimenez. I guess I could look at the list here. Ivan Reis. He gets all of his collaborators from the past, say 15, 20, oh gosh, it's weird to think Jeff Johns has been around for almost 20 years, but it's true. But for the past 15 years or so, he gets all of his collaborators, and it's just a love letter to the DC universe. And to add on to that, the fact that this is what kind of brought back DC into full force in 2016, it really is a testament. Add on top of that, all the Watchmen stuff. It's great. It's a lot of fun, and it's not expensive. So if you are a huge DC fan, or a huge Jeff Johns fan, or a huge whatever, you can get this on in-stock trades for like $10, probably less. It's a no-brainer. It's a great story, and if your single issue that you've already bought that was $2.99 is worn out, this isn't going to wear out anytime soon. So I can't recommend it enough. There is a local comic book shop variant that is the same cover but without the colors. I think it's just a pencil cover. If you can get that, great. But if not, hey, that one's awesome. The next one is not superheroes, strangely enough, or Star Wars or anything like that. If anything, it's very realistic fiction. It is The Fade Out by Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, and Elizabeth Breitweiser. This is probably one of the more engaging mystery stories of the past. I keep saying the past few years, but Brubaker and Phillips handle that kind of LA Confidential, Hollywood of the late golden age of Hollywood, that time period so well. It makes for an excellent setting of a mystery. It's a great story, but it's not the story alone that I recommend on this comic. There is so much supplemental material from all of the creators that were involved that you don't get in many comics. And think of remember when DVDs had really good special features? It's a thing that doesn't really happen too much anymore, unless it's like Criterion or something like that. Think of this as like a Criterion release of a comic. You have commentary from the colorist, which if you aren't familiar with Elizabeth Breitweiser's coloring work, she's one of the best out there. It complements Sean Phillips' artwork, which in turn complements Brubaker's writing. This is a well-developed package. If you're into like his Criminal run or his Gotham Central run, or any of the other work that he's been doing lately, Fatale, Velvet, you have to pick this up. You have to. It's one and done. It's not a volume one. It's just one really good story. This is a great comic that I feel like people talk about and compliment, but don't talk about enough. This is one of the best. Do yourself a favor. This rivals what I feel like is the best release of the year, but it's not. The best release of the year, I think, goes to Uncanny XMen Omnibus Volume 3. Now, this is going to be a weird recommendation. If you don't have Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 1, Volume 2, don't worry about it. You don't really need it. That sounds ridiculous, I know, because, well, you're also saying, hey, you don't need the Dark Phoenix Saga, and you don't need Giant Size X-Men #1. You don't need all that stuff. You don't need the introduction to Kitty Pryde. You do. I mean, it's buy it if you can. But if you're buying just one of the Uncanny X-Men omnibuses, the Chris Claremont stuff, this is the one to get. And the reason why is because this contains so many classic, timeless X-Men stories in one volume. It's really, really unparalleled as far as stuff that they've collected before. And, I know $125 MSRP is MSRP, sorry, is a hard pill to swallow, but you're getting the Ileana Magic miniseries. You're getting the Frank Miller Wolverine miniseries. You're getting the Dark Brood saga. You're getting God Loves Man Kills. You're getting so many excellent X-Men comics in one volume in an oversized format. And just like in the past, Marvel doesn't slouch when it comes to supplemental material. This is a great, great package. And, some people might be bummed out because the Marvel's omnibuses usually release 2 copies, a direct market variant and just a regular cover. The direct market variant was a Paul Smith cover from X-Men 167. It went pretty fast. I think if you didn't buy it that first week, you didn't get it, or you're buying it from a third party, eBay or something like that. If you can't get that one, I get it. It's a bummer. But the Jerome Pena cover, which shows, Wolverine fighting the Hand, it's got the Brood Queen on there. It's so awesome. And I know that the cover art doesn't exactly reflect the interior art. I get it. But it's a nice little cherry on top of a really, really good sundae. Well, that's 15 minutes. I feel like that's enough to talk about all the stuff that came out this year. There's a lot of other stuff. Fantagraphics wrapped up their excellent archival editions of the Peanuts comic strips. In the same regard, they also did excellent work with the Hip Hop Family Tree volumes that have been coming out. If you haven't checked those out, look at them. Dark Horse continues to put out excellent editions of Isagi Yojimbo. The list goes on. There's plenty of things to spend your money on. This is not, the exclusive list, but it's a good start. And like I said, I don't think you're going to be disappointed if you spend your money on any of these things. All right. That'll be it for now, and pretty much it for me from this year. For those of you who have not listened to Legendary Runs, I recommend you check it out. It's a pretty fun podcast where we get into the nitty gritty of, we get into some discussions of some legendary contributions Mara and I do. We're going to be starting a whole new slate next year, and it begins with Death Note, the manga. So that should be a pretty interesting experiment, seeing as I'm not a big manga fan, but that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. All right. From Talking Comics, I'm Matt Wood, and have a happy holiday and a happy new year.